My name is Emily, and I will be presenting the Fallen Leaves installation by Menashe Kadishman at the Jewish Museum in Berlin. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge that the Jewish Museum in Berlin's Kreuzberg district is one of the most visited museums in the German capital. Millions from around the world have visited this museum since its opening in the late 2001. With its unique architectural vision and building design by Daniel Libeskind, the museum does not set aside the history of the Jewish community within Germany as being separate from the history of the country as a whole. Instead, there is a conscious effort by Libeskind and the museum to have visitors consider how historical, cultural, art, literature, music, intellectual, scientific, and economic contributions from the Jewish community are tied inextricably with the history of Germany over the span of 2 millennia. Its permanent collection contains tens of thousands of unique objects, ranging from ancient cultural artifacts to artwork by contemporary Jewish artists, all organized in a comprehensive overview of the Jewish experience. Architect Daniel Libeskind's Between the Lines design won the competition in 1989 for the extension of the Berlin Museum with a Jewish museum department. It was the first time that one of his designs was actually built. The building zigzags with its titanium facade and features underground axes, angled walls, and bare concrete voids without heat or air conditioning. With his between-the-lines design, American architect Daniel Libeskind did not want simply to design a museum building, but to recount German Jewish history. Libeskind designed the museum with multiple empty spaces, or voids, to represent the absence of Jews from German society. Among these voids, there is the memory void, with an installation by the Israeli artist Menashe Kadishman, and in this installation called Shalekhet, which translates to fallen leaves, the ground is covered with 10,000 steel faces dedicated to war and the victims of violence. This room is at the end point of the underground floor in the Libeskind building, where the architecture is intended to convey the physical emptiness that resulted from the expulsion, destruction, and annihilation of Jewish life in the Shoah. It focuses on victims of the Holocaust and serves as a kind of testament to the horrors of humanity and to those who have fallen from shameless brutality. Visitors are encouraged to interact by walking on the exhibit itself, to see the open mouths in terror, the faces of soundless screams, and to listen to the jarring, clanging sounds when thick metal pieces jostle against each other. There is actually over 10,000 open-mouthed faces made out of iron plates covering the entirety of the floor, and they appear to be wailing in agony. When standing above them, visitors grind them into the ground beneath their feet, and in a sense, making them an active culprit. The installation harbors an eerie atmosphere, and visitors remark feeling what is unmistakably guilt as they tread on screaming faces and walk over representations of living people. Visitors also note that the fact that the faces are unidentifiable is probably the eeriest part of the walk. Representing a time when humanitarianism was the farthest thing from a priority, we are reminded of how Jews were stripped of identity and reduced to a number. Shalekhet is hugely prominent and occupies a large surface area of the museum, and it's clear that the installation holds a powerful significance to the museum and subsequently its viewers. Each iron disc is actually individually cut and made. They are all vaguely identical to symbolize the loss of identity suffered by the victims of the Holocaust. The artist was born in Mandate, Palestine, to two Zionists, Bila and Ben Zion Kadishman. He was an Israeli sculptor and painter, renowned as the country's most famous artist both locally and globally. His works are synonymous with the original Israeli art, much like Picasso is for Spain and Van Gogh for the Netherlands, and his creations captivate with their complexity, symbolism, and versatility, depicting life in Israel and the associated emotions, love of the land, pain and loss, and strength and heroism. He is very much politically, socially, and environmentally involved, and his values generally center on current affairs, while also drawing influences from Israel. The ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict bears some relationship to what's happening in Nazi Berlin, and it inspires him to create similarly revolutionary artwork. Shalekhet aims to look at the incompleteness of Germany at the time and how much pain the citizens had been put through. This installment overall is hugely imposing and emotive. the choice of material, the scale, and thought process for how the artwork would fit into the memory void, all pulled together in a way that gives respect to the innocent who died from war and violence. The installation reveals the devastation caused on a grand scale and really forces you to contemplate human failings and the consequences of those failings, and possibly what can be done to avoid indiscriminate acts of violence in the future. While doing research for this presentation, I actually came across a series of really interesting and important concepts and questions regarding Jewish museums and how we are perceiving Jewish identity today. Questions consist of: what are Jewish museums for? Are they just a holding place for relics of the past, an aid memoir for visitors, or are they something else? And should Jewish museums be about the past, tradition, and religion, or the Holocaust, which dominated the 80s and 90s? Or should it be a more positive story about migration, assimilation, and rising prosperity? In other words, what kind of story do we want to tell ourselves and others about the Jewish culture? And how are others going to perceive Jewish culture? Also, what do Germans really know about contemporary Jewish culture in their own country? We have the former chief curator of the Jewish Museum of Vienna has suggested that a Jewish museum today, or today's Jewish museum, is or should be a memorial space that through its holdings both preserves and activates memory, an institution that educates by means of stimulating or even disconcerting its viewers, and a witness for the prosecution in the ongoing dispute between past and future. I thought I would share a particularly moving quote from Kadishman himself, which states that when we were young, we wanted our art to change the world. But when Hitler bombed Guernica, did Picasso's painting have any effect? I thought that maybe some things of mine could do good. My sculptures didn't change the war in Lebanon. Maybe art is not about changing anything, it's about telling you reality.